Welcome back to another StockTwits executive interview. I'm Katie Perry, here with Dr. Marc Hedrick, CEO and President of Plus Therapeutics. Dr. Hedrick, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Hi, Katie. Thank you.
Excited to learn more about your company. You work in different components to it, but specifically radiotherapeutics is something you guys are known for. But for those people at home hearing about Plus Therapeutics for the first time, maybe new to companies like yours overall, what are you building as a company, and what problem are you solving in the medical field?
Yeah, so Plus is evolving. It's an exciting time for the company. So we started as a targeted radiotherapeutic company, a drug company, if you will, for patients with central nervous system cancers, and that brain cancer, let's say brain cancer to cut it short. But recently we acquired a leading diagnostic platform for brain cancers called CNSide. And so that's a 4-in-1 test that tells you all sorts of things about brain cancer. Do you have it? What drugs might work? Is it getting better, getting worse? You can make all sorts of therapeutic decisions around that. So we acquired that, and then we recognized, okay, we have the therapeutics, we have the diagnostics. There could be a tremendous amount of data opportunity to integrate those two platforms to define new therapies, new diagnostics, and better ways to treat these patients. And I think the key thing to understand with brain cancers is the survivals haven't budged in 40 years. All other cancers, the survivals have improved by about 300%. That's pretty flat for brain and CNS cancers. So obviously the things that very smart people have done over 40 years and very good companies really haven't moved the needle in aggregate. And so we're really taking a fresh approach and trying to integrate all three. Nobody's done that before. And then trying to finally bend that survival curve up for these patients.
Yeah, I want to get into sort of the addressable market for this, because this continues to be a big challenge for a lot of people. You sort of answered it, the integration of these components, the therapeutics, the diagnostic, the analytics. How uncommon is that in your industry to combine those things together? Is this something that you guys are really kind of out front leading with?
It's unusual. There are a couple of big company examples like Roche who go across those different verticals, but to do it in a disease-focused way is very unusual. There just aren't a lot of comps. But I mean, back to the fundamental realization that what's been done hasn't worked. And in our view, if you take a fresh approach to the diagnostics, the therapeutics, and integrate, now incredible opportunities to process through data and learn things, gain knowledge from a unique data set, which we will have, the opportunities will be there. We're very excited about our clinical pipeline, our therapeutic pipeline. We're very excited about the diagnostic pipeline, but the analytics just tie all that together.
Let's talk about the diagnostic piece. So you mentioned that CNSide Diagnostics, a subsidiary of Plus. Can you explain sort of how this all works? I know there's been some news around reimbursement coverage, and I want to talk about that because that seems like it would accelerate go-to-market for this particular piece of the business. But what exactly does the diagnostics piece do, and who has access to the reimbursement for that?
So the diagnostic is a platform, and it interrogates or assesses the fluid around the brain and spinal cord. You can tell a tremendous amount of things about a cancer from interrogating the fluid. You get it through a lumbar puncture, but once patients are in treatment, they have a port inside. You have really 24/7 access to the fluid around the brain. And so what can it tell you? It can tell you if you have cancer. It can tell you if you have a lot of cells that are there, that it's advanced, or if there are not a lot of cells there, maybe it's on the more treatable side or more responsive to treatment. It can tell you what drugs might be useful for that tumor. There's an interesting thing called genetic drift, where a patient with breast cancer might have a tumor that expresses a certain set of genes, and then when it gets to the brain, it changes. And so that affects what drugs might be useful. And then, the genomic status of the patient and what the individual cells are expressing on their surface, you can interrogate all of that. But it starts with that first test, which is, do you have cancer and how many cells that are there? And you mentioned the payer decision. So of that sort of 4-in-1 platform, the anchor of that is called tumor cell enumeration. And that's what, a few weeks ago, we announced that UnitedHealthcare was now paying for the test. And just recently we announced that Humana will now pay for it. So what we're doing at CNSide right now is both building out the internal commercial capabilities, which are important, including a new facility. It's purpose built for this diagnostic, but also building out the market access. Payer agreements are very important, but also expanding into all 50 states and then putting in place additional tests. So expanding that testing platform from that core test to all the tests I mentioned before.
You mentioned the payer agreements, first UnitedHealthcare, then Humana. Size that up, tens of millions of people now are getting that. Is that?
Yeah, so our goal is to get all the major payer groups in the U.S., including Medicare. And actually, the nature of this population, it's sort of skewed more towards the private payers than Medicare, but the plan is to get all of them. Our goal this year is to end up this year with around 100 million lives covered. You think about 330 million patients, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
And once you get one, the second one's easier, the third one's easier.
Yeah.
So that's a big element of our commercial strategy, is to bring those payers on up front before we really start rolling out the tests all over the U.S.
Okay, so it's interesting because like investors at home with a pharmaceutical company, usually they're focused solely on like the stage of the trials, but you have these different components of the business. So it seems like the diagnostic metrics updates to look for are in those payer agreements. The therapeutic side, what milestones or progress should investors be looking to in the next 6-12 months as you guys develop that portion of the business?
Yeah, so it's the more standard milestones that you see with drug and therapeutic companies. It's progress through clinical development, through progress with the FDA, new data, and so forth. So a focus on our lead drug, REYOBIQ, which is a targeted radiotherapeutic that solves a lot of the endemic problems that have plagued drug development for central nervous system cancers for decades. But that drug is now in active clinical trials for 3 different kinds of cancer. There's pediatric brain cancer. There's the most common primary cancer of the brain, which is called glioblastoma. But really, where the patients are from an epidemiologic perspective is brain mets. So there are about 15,000 patients in the U.S. a year that are diagnosed with glioblastoma. It's about 10x that for metastatic cancer. And so we're talking about maybe 1 million patients in the U.S. that are walking around with advanced cancer that are potential users of the diagnostic, and about 400,000 that are potential users for the therapeutic. So just to kind of bring that all together, I think a key milestone for us in the near future is getting alignment with the FDA about the development path, particularly for one of the metastatic complications of brain cancer. It's called leptomeningeal metastases. And there are no drugs approved for it. So it's really important to have a collaborative relationship with the regulators and come up with the appropriate development plan. So that's a near-term milestone, kind of a Q4 readout on that we'll be talking about early next year.
I want to talk about this new facility you all have now at Houston, Texas Medical Center. Seems very interesting. I'm curious about the capabilities or collaborative opportunities that might open up for your team. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, to put it in context, we're launching the diagnostic. We're expanding our clinical trial operations. For a variety of reasons, we picked Houston as our location, and there are lots of reasons behind that. But we're a mile from MD Anderson. We're essentially on the campus of the largest medical center in the world. We have very educated workforce. A lot of what we do is in person. It can't be sort of hybridized out in the community. So you need a workforce there, and you need an attractive, retentive place for people want to come to work. And so the facility we're moving into was built by Heinz Interest, and it's one of the top medical science buildings I've seen in the world, and I've seen a lot of them. It's fantastic, and so we're planning on putting a stake in the ground and growing there, and that will be the location for our CNSide Diagnostics LLC as well.
All right, final question for you. You have investors looking at there's more ways than ever to invest. I think pharma biotech is a little bit of a area where a lot of retail investors don't have direct exposure, but they might have, they have a loved one who has suffered from something like this. So there is that interesting tie-in. When you go out to retail investors, explaining the company, explaining how you're different, what is the story you want them to hear about Plus Therapeutics, where you are today, where you're going? What is sort of that through line you want retail investors to really understand?
To put it simplistically, prior to acquiring the diagnostic and beginning to evolve the company's mission and operations, we were a pharmaceutical company, and we were tied to the milestones that we mentioned before. That in terms of clinical development and FDA hitting FDA milestones, but adding the diagnostic means we're really a diagnostic near-term revenue company that has a therapeutic pipeline and then has the ability to integrate the data analytics component across that. So from a retail investor perspective, that's a much nearer term, more concrete story than than a drug development approach.
And I guess one quick follow-up before you go. On the diagnostic, what's the economic model for that? Is that sort of like a subscription, or how does that work?
Yeah, good. Yeah, so it's called a laboratory developed test.
Okay.
So it's all done in a centralized facility in Houston, so we can basically test for the entirety of the U.S. through that facility. So being in a major metropolitan area between two major airports is important. The model is we bill Medicare and we bill the payers.
A per test basis.
Yeah,
Yep.
on a per test basis, and they're 4 tests. We initially got a payer approval, as I mentioned, from United, Humana on that lead test, but there are another 4 tests behind that are coming on board. So we sort of aggregate that revenue. In terms of more tests we bring on, the more revenue there is. But the goal is to get an attractive reimbursement on that lead test, which is really the core of what distinguishes us from other companies.
All right. Well, Dr. Marc Hedrick, President and CEO of Plus Therapeutics, thank you so much for stopping by with us today. Really fascinating to hear about the business.
Thank you, Katie.